So what's up, guys? John Francis here, Fuel Fitness Co. On this channel, we're breaking down training, breaking down different gear, different supplements, and honestly looking at the evidence and just testing what actually works. I'm super excited because I just signed up for the first competition that I've signed up for in a long time, and I decided to do a HYROX. Why not? Everybody's doing it. In the video, I'm specifically going to break down my HYROX training prep day. This is a day that I'm trying to dedicate every single week to HYROX prep. It is not a HYROX simulation, so don't worry. I'm not going there. It's not a HYROX simulation, but I think it's an important training day to incorporate. I think it's an important type of training day to incorporate for most people. If you're a professional, HYROX athlete, or you're a professional athlete in general, then obviously this could be way different. But for folks like myself that are training in all kinds of different capacities, I'm really trying to retain and maintain muscle mass at my age. I'm also really trying to, I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I still want to keep a certain level of strength. I enjoy training CrossFit. So if you're like that and you're kind of doing a bunch of different things, maybe you're playing another sport, tennis, pickleball, something like that outside of the gym, I think this type of workout day, incorporating this type of workout once a week can be important. So I'm going to break down that workout, break down my purposes behind that workout. Then I'm going to go into and break down kind of how I would adjust and tailor that workout depending on where your fitness level is at, and how you could really start with this type of workout as well. So we'll start off with the introductions and then get into the breakdown of the workout. I have been, with that being said, with the workout that you're about to see, I've got some background. I've got a lot of training background. But I will say this, my running mileage right now, as of a couple weeks ago, was at 0 miles per week. Now, I had shin splints last year, a bad case, really bad, almost to the point I thought it might have been a stress fracture. Couldn't run at all. Had to take a ton of time off. I wasn't even running much at the time. I was getting ready to start back running a little bit, and then I got the shin splints really bad. Had to stop completely. I have been working on trying to rehabilitate that. I have been working on trying to, I've been doing some things that are going to prep me. I've been doing some aerobic work that I think is going to prep me. So even though this is my first official HYROX prep, HYROX training workout that I've done in my HYROX progression, I've done things and already built a base that have gotten me here. If that makes sense. I'll talk more about that later at the end when I talk about tailoring the program to you. But for now, let's walk through the workout. So the whole idea and the concept behind this day is kind of mimicking a long run, or maybe not quite a long run, a little more intense than a long run. Maybe a lactate threshold close to that range type of day. For me, my heart rate probably staying around in the 150s, 38-year-old male, 200 pounds, I'm not in great shape, but in fairly decent shape, keeping around the 150, give or take a little bit heart rate. You'll see why it's give or take a little bit in the workout. But my idea is to be able to do this for a sustainable amount of time. And in this prep day, keep extending that amount of time out longer and longer. So it's going to be, in a sense, like a long run day. My goal is distance in the early stages, more so than output, right? It's to get a lot of repetitions. I want to develop a very, very strong aerobic base. So I'm going to keep all my work is meant to be sustainable. So even though I use the term AMRAP, it's literally just to have a time domain, right? I'm just moving consistently throughout that time domain. I'm not truly trying to get as many reps as possible, which is what a true AMRAP would be. So I'm not doing that. I'm just moving consistently. So you could call it, you could use other terminology for it. I just use AMRAP, but I also specify that it's at a very, it's a pace that is uncomfortable. I could potentially talk to somebody, but it would be uncomfortable to be having a conversation. It would, I'm not so out of breath that I can't talk at all. I could possibly nasal breathe through this. Just giving you some ideas. Nasal breathing might be difficult, especially if you're not experiencing nasal breathing, but just giving you some ideas, of that. So let's get into the workout itself. What this day looked like is a 14-minute, it's 3 14-minute AMRAPs with 1 minute rest in between each AMRAP. Again, not true AMRAP. The idea with that is to give me large blocks of work and then with a rest just to make sure I can regulate, keep my heart rate down, give myself just a little bit of recovery early on to keep my paces consistent across the board. So big blocks of interval training is basically what we're looking at here. So 14-minute AMRAP, 100-foot reverse sled drag, 5 plates, 250-meter row, 100-foot double dumbbell overhead carry, 50 pounds, 250-meter ski. I'm going to keep repeating through that for the whole 14 minutes. What was my reasoning behind the movements? Reverse sled drag, for one, I think is a great exercise for your knees in general, but I wanted an exercise. I didn't want to do tons and tons of sled pushes, so I wanted some variation there. Some variation that would mimic that same pace, that would mimic, that would give me a little bit of fatigue in my legs. I chose a weight and a speed on the sled drag that would give me a little bit of fatigue when I came off the sled drag. Oh, and the distance. All that was based on, I did some trial runs. I did some warming up beforehand to see what weight, what distance, what speed would be ideal to give me like a little bit of fatigue in the legs. They're not full blown, right? A little bit of fatigue in the legs, keep my heart rate up, but not go overboard, and allow me to go from the sled drag to the row. And then the row being a leg dominant exercise, I could clear the fatigue from my legs on the row. So using the row to learn how to recover through movement, being more aerobic, develop endurance that way, and clear that fatigue on the row. Then from there, give the legs just a little bit of a break, go into a 100-foot double dumbbell overhead carry. And that is not obviously a HYROX specific. Well, I mean, it's not HYROX specific, but all these movements have carryover. Like I believe the double dumbbell overhead carry is going to help overall with shoulder endurance, which you get into the 100 wall balls, things like that. There's some carryover there, but it's also an accessory exercise. It's going to help me with the isometric shoulder, hold overhead, the stability, trying to stabilize the dumbbell, all that. I think it's good for shoulder health. So mixing in a good accessory exercise in there, giving the legs just a little bit of rest, because I do need to build up the volume that my legs are able to handle. But it would still keep my heart rate elevated. I wouldn't be able to recover so much that my heart rate drops all the way down to the 120s. It's going to still, 50 pounds was heavy enough, 100 foot was long enough that could keep my heart rate somewhat elevated, but not skyrocket it. So I was looking for movements like that too, that weren't going to just skyrocket my heart rate or let it completely drop. Then going into the ski, same concept. I wanted my shoulders to have like a little bit of fatigue, and then go into the ski and clear that fatigue and create the ability to recover while moving through the skier and develop some capacity there, which is also going to help in my CrossFit workouts. It's also going to help in jiu-jitsu. It's going to help in my bodybuilding stuff to help build that shoulder endurance. And then you're back to the sled drag, back on the legs, also helping your body shuttle blood from the arms to the legs, arms to the legs, arms to the legs, which is a thing too that can be important for, definitely for CrossFit, and even some, not as much needed in HYROX, but for some of the HYROX as well. Rest 1 minute, Then go into another 14-minute AMRAP, 100-foot farmer's carry. I did 70 pounds, 50-foot sled push, 5 plates, 200-meter run, 20 lateral dumbbell raise, 15 pounds, and then 250-meter ski. Thoughts behind the farmer's carry? Obviously, that is a movement within the HYROX race. So developing some capacity there, getting some reps in, getting some practice there. Starting, same thing. I wanted a maintainable distance, maintainable weight, maintainable pace, where I could really just, my heart rate wouldn't go super high, but it would just keep it, keep it from dropping below probably 140 or something like that. 50-foot sled push, 5 plates. I knew that that was going to build up some fatigue in my quads. It was going to build up some fatigue in my calves. Not a ton, but again, just picking a weight and a distance and a speed that would just get that fatigue, just get me to ride that line of that fatigue, and then, but not spike my heart rate too crazy either. And but then come back off into the run, use the run to clear that fatigue from my legs, learn how to recover on the run. Also building in a little bit of a touch on the run and building some mileage, right? That helps add to my weekly mileage a little bit. Then going from the run, shuttle some blood back from the legs into the shoulders with the lateral dumbbell raise, 20 of them at 15 pounds. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm getting in a shoulder accessory exercise, something that's really good for aesthetics and building a nice cap on the delts. And then also still improving some shoulder endurance, going from that directly back into the ski at that pace where I can recover on the ski and clear that fatigue from my shoulders. Again, I was able to push the dumbbell raise a little bit harder because it's such an isolated exercise, that I could push those pretty hard and really try to force some endurance on my shoulders. And it's not going to really get my heart rate super spiked up or be super intense, right? And so I feel like in that, I think we'll also have a carryover into movements like the wall balls and then other things as well. Kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone there. And then you go back off the ski into the farmer's carry, which doesn't really have that much like interference. And then you go back into the sled push and your legs are kind of recovered enough by then that it's just not too much. It's not overbearing on the legs. Because what I don't want in this style of workouts for my legs to blow up. I have those workouts where I want my legs to blow up, right? And in my CrossFit workouts, sometimes we have those. They're just nasty. It just blows your quads up. Or if I'm doing bodybuilding exercises, I have those in the program, but not on this day. That's not the intent behind this day. Intent behind this day is more aerobic capacity. And then rest 1 minute after that AMRAP, go into another 14-minute AMRAP, starting with a 100-foot D-ball carry. That's just a accessory exercise for me. I think it's an important exercise for the posterior chain. It's important to do carries. So I threw this in there to incorporate that in. Also, while it doesn't mimic a sled push necessarily, it mimics that state of constant tension on your body like a sled push is. So just, throwing something in that is an accessory exercise that's going to keep my heart rate up. Same thing, it's not going to spike my heart rate. I picked a distance and a weight that wasn't going to be crazy. Come off that, I went directly into a 500-meter Concept 2 bike, where now I'm going to spin the legs up a little bit and generate a little bit of fatigue again in the quads. I'm not going to go super crazy there. I'm just going to ride that line to the point by the end of the 500 meters where I'm really getting into that. I'm starting to feel the pump just a little bit, but nothing crazy. And then boom, after the 500 meters, I'm back on the run, clearing that fatigue. I'm recovering on the run, clearing the fatigue. And then 250-meter ski, going back to the upper body more so, changing that up, shuttling blood back from the legs to the upper body to the shoulders, and then getting back to D-ball carry and repeat. And then going back to in some of our reasoning for, I know the paces, all the paces on the ski are, to reiterate, the ski, row, run, those paces are slow. They're moderate, right? They're kind of a nasal breathing pace, or barely conversational pace riding that line. And then afterwards, I did some accessory work like tibialis raises. To me, something important when you're starting back running. You know, you really want to keep your shins healthy, especially if you've had shin splints before. Want to keep them calves healthy. Do a lot of calf raises. I do plyometrics. If you are, so let's talk about now and kind of get out of. Let's go into kind of breaking this work down. The progressions. What I see the progressions looking like for this type of workout. So ideally, the progression we want is to increase total work time. So however you get there would be okay, right? If you're completely deconditioned and you want to do a 5-minute AMRAP, 1 minute rest, 5-minute AMRAP, 1 minute rest, that's 15 total minutes of work. So now you could go in and next week do a 6-minute, 6-minute, 6-minute. To me, ideally, from week to week, you do this training session once a week. You want to increase your total work time within the workout by 2 to 4 minutes a week. I think that's a good, healthy progression if you're keeping your paces the same, to where I think eventually you're going to be able to do more work. You'll be able to do more work in that amount of time under the same heart rate, especially as you adapt on the runner and the skier, and you're adapting and becoming more efficient at those movements. As time goes on, right, and we start increasing that time, eventually getting into the range. I'd like to be in the range of, I'm doing this for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. But of course, that being said, in that type of workout, I'm going to be adding more time to the row, adding more time to the ski, adding more time to the run, adding more time to the bike. I'm not going to be necessarily adding more time and more weight up to a certain point, right? Early on, you may add weight to the sled drag. You may start adding distance to the sled drag. You may add weight to and you can pick your movements, right? According to what you think you should do. You could throw in, I didn't throw in something like wall balls, but you could throw in some wall balls. I tried to pick lower impact movements that weren't going to have eccentrics in them and weren't going to make me sore. So that was another reason behind my methodology. So, but you could increase the numbers, the weights, the distances on your sled drag, your sled push, your farmer's carries, your D-ball carries, your dumbbell raises, or whatever movements you choose to put in the AMRAP. You can increase those up to a certain point. But I'd say once you start getting up into like the 1 hour or like maybe 45 minutes to 1 hour range, once you start getting into that range, instead of extending the durations of those other movements, I would probably start extending the durations of just the row, ski, bike, run, right? Because those movements are going to be lower impact besides the run, and easier to recover from, and they're not going to beat you down as bad because you're doing other training, right? If all you're doing is HYROX, that maybe not be as bad, I don't know. But you're not wanting to beat yourself down too much. So that's why. That's how I would increase the progression there. And just keep building up slowly from week to week to week to week. Because if you're doing a single HYROX and you're slower pace, I haven't even looked at what my pace would be for HYROX. But like I imagine if the elites are doing it in under an hour, I imagine it's probably going to take me 2 hours because my running is slow nowadays. So, that's why I'm extending the time to that hour and 30. Maybe I'll do one touch by the time I get close to HYROX, do a touch on like a 2 hour or something like that. And I'll cycle that, and I'll probably, since I'm far enough out from the HYROX, I'll build that up, and then I'll probably be able to bring the time back down and increase my speeds and my paces, and then bring it back up again. And I'll be able to progress like that because I just have enough time before the HYROX, and I'm starting with no running base. I'm probably going to get pretty quickly a lot more efficient at running. Please, if you have any questions at all, any comments, any thoughts, tips, whatever, would love to hear them. Please drop them down in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching.